everyone, welcome back again to the iConis podcast. We're still going so strong. We love it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and sharing. Thank you for rating and reviewing. Thank you for all of that. But we got to ask you one more thing. We have a community tab on our YouTube page, and we want you to participate in that more. We have a lot of polls that are still open, that are still going on strong, and we need a little bit more participation. So we know for a lot of you that listen, you might not be subscribed to the page. Subscribe to the page. Help us keep growing, and we'll keep doing what we love to do for you, and we really love doing that for you. So it's really like a fan service. You know, you help us, we help you. It's like you do a little something for me, we do a little something for you. All right, cool. On that note, we're going to go through the round table like usual. We're going to do this real quick. So remember, support the book, support the book, support the books. So please, if you're out in Kitchener, go to Wild Comics, check out Wes and the rest of the guys. Tell them we said hi, and they'll definitely treat you right. And if you're out in Montreal, to our fans there, please go and check out Check Swings on the South Shore. Tell Trevor, the rest of the guys, that we said hi from the iConis podcast. They'll definitely treat you right. Also, they've really been supporters of this show. I was just there recently, a little while ago, just saying hi to the guys there. So I'm going to post a picture or two from that, escapade. On that, also remember, Brandy Ford, she has the Writer in the Wit subscription magazine that comes out monthly, that does things comedy and beyond that. So please subscribe to that. Her links are down below. She's shown us a little bit of shout outs there, and we just want to make sure we shout that out back to her. And just spread the love. There's more than going on than that. And then, of course, there's also a podcast I used to mention before, Back to the Balcony with Jimmy England. He's still going. He just celebrated. He didn't get a chance to do his 100th episode celebration, so we just did that recently. It's coming out shortly. He's actually got 177 episodes. But I'm on that 100th episode, so keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll link that down below, too. And I know they just played a little while ago, but we're going to be doing some more shows. So if you want to see where I'm going to be live, please look at the link down below, or for those listening, barry3d.com. Barry, B-A, not B-E. So barry3d.com. That has all my links, everything where I'm going to be for doing shows, everything like that. And the guys I roll with, that's a Touch of Gray Matter. That's myself, Zolf Ali, and Dave Sokolowski. Please keep an eye out for it. We're doing stuff live, and Dave's always doing some fundraisers for the homeless and food banks and shelters and so forth with the widow's son. So keep an eye out, through me for his stuff, and help make the world a better place than it is today. That's all we got to do. Make it a better place when you wake up in the morning than it was the night before. Sweet. On my side, as always, I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, my co-host, my cousin, my best friend, the one that kind of balances the show out also. And he couldn't do it and wouldn't want to do it without him. Never. The one and only.
DJ Rod C. Good day, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of iConis. The icon is something, if you read upon there, you'll see it right there, but I'm not going to say it right now because we still got maybe one or two more housekeeping to do.
Right. As usual, if you want to do something like what we're doing, right? So you want to go and maybe start a podcast yourself, then definitely go to Podbean. That's where we have our main hosting for all our episodes, from episode 1 to up this episode right now. So it's over 100 episodes we've got on there. So podbean.com. If you want to find us, then definitely check out iconis.podbean.com to find all our main stuff. And then you can also like and follow us there too. And then any other place you want to turn around and support it there. And last but not least, if you're doing a podcast, you're going to need a couple of different things. One, for sure, you're going to need a logo. You're going to need some kind of template if you're going to also do a video version of it like we do also. And remember, there's only one person you really should be reaching out to that'll give you a discount. If you tell him that you heard about him here on the iConis podcast, he will give you a discount. Rod, who are we talking about?
J Bird Digital Art.
J Bird Digital Arts. Jason, thank you so much. He'll hook you up. Can't go wrong. And as I said, if you're going to start something new, start it off smart for your wallet. Reach out to Jay. Say you heard about iConis. Get that discount, and then have your own funds kicking it off. All right.
There you go.
I think we got it done in record time. Here we go.
Nice.
Now, you've seen it. You've seen the title, Dungeons and Dragons. You think you know about it. Okay, fine. Maybe you're fans of it, and fans of it. So are we, in all senses of the word. So that's what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, fan theory, iConis style.
Okay, let's do it.
That's it. So the icon is Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon. Here we go. And how it can go maybe up to now. We'll talk some little tidbits in there, just our thoughts and theories about that, a roundtable discussion. So let me kick this off. Rod, back in the day, now, whatever, have you played the game Dungeons and Dragons?
I played it not as thorough as yourself. I know my lane. I know my lane when it comes to D&D. I
Right.
know my lane. I may just go and just confuse the party I'm with. I may have us leading into an area. I may just say, I'm going to shoot an arrow over here and hit some innocent person who's just carrying milk for her child, from the local market. I might just upset the whole crusade. I'll just stay in the back. I'll just watch. Are we here? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? What do you want me to do? I'll stay over on this side. Just call me when you need me.
Wow.
That's my role.
Because you know what?
That's my role.
With that bow and arrow, that's called rolling the one. All right. Don't want to roll the one because when you roll a one, everything goes wrong on a D20. We know that. Yes. I'm a huge fan of it.
See what I'm talking about?
Right. Okay. Yes.
Take on a life, and I didn't realize it. I'd be taking on someone's life, and then the whole village come after us, messed up our party. No. I'll be the bad luck charm. People leaving by the foot of the hill as they go up the hill into the caves to get the treasure. You're not getting a portion because you're just being bad luck to us. Yeah.
And the famous words. This is I'm Leroy Jenkins. I got this. Anyone who seen that meme, you know what I'm talking about. It's all over. Yeah, that Leroy Jenkins thing is funny. Right. So Dungeons and Dragons, yes, I'm a fan of it. I played the game many different years, different versions over time. I got introduced to it way back in the day, way back in the day. But even before I was introduced to it, the game had to be created, right? So here we go. So this game was created back in 1974 by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. Now, Gary Gygax is seen as the godfather of tabletop games, and he's worked on other ones, but then he kind of got into the Dungeons and Dragons, making that game come to life because he was a fan of, obviously, Lord of the Rings, fantasy games. He was doing war games before, and he kind of worked out that system on how it should be and how he envisioned it to be. So it started off with some guy in a garage, like we say at the end of every episode. This episode, it was started off with a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. And here we are talking about Dungeons and Dragons and the I can't even. It's just grown. It's just its own. It started off that way, and it's still played that way. And it's a good time, So it's more than a choose your own adventure, but maybe it's less than writing a full out novel that you're getting published, because every dungeon master, every DM is either using a story that's in a module and then just telling the tale and setting the mood and keeping everyone in line to get to the end there within the confines of that story, or they're making up their own dungeons and own adventures, their own modules, so to speak, from scratch. There's better storytelling than some of the novels that we read that you buy from Barnes and Nobles or where people buying their books these days. Indigo, Chapters, Coles. Right. There we go. Okay, so this is what it is, and it gets the imagination going. It gives you so much. It's such a rich world, and as I said, back in 1974, and this thing is still going up to now. So even though it changed hands from publishing, because I started off from TSR publishers, and then they got bought out by Wizards of the Coast in 1997 till present date. And then there was different versions of D&D, so it started off with, I remember the basic set, basic, right? And in the basic set, you didn't have what we had when you got the advanced basic set. You either played, your character classes were limited. So it's either you were a fighter, a magic user, a cleric, an elf. Okay. And an elf was like a multi-class character, and that was their basic set. And you started off and go through what you think a Dungeons and Dragon thing would be. You got your adventurers, you make your rolls to get their abilities, right? For their strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, which adds to your hit points, your armor class, what it needs to roll something to hit you on that way. And that's how this whole thing started, with that imagination. And then it just kept going and going, and then it got advanced, and then advanced brought in different character classes. So then you had, for over time, I'm not saying chronological order, but they had the fighter class. Then it said, well, we've seen other movies. What would be a fighter, subclass of a fighter class? A fighter class is just like a fighter. And then people started doing subclasses, and then it was like, well, the paladin, holy knight. Oh yeah, the holy knights. Okay, yeah, okay, that's a subclass. What's another subclass? Cavaliers. Oh, okay. So to explain it to our readers, or sorry, people that are watching who might not be familiar, a fighter is pretty much that. He's a guy that walks in there, and I'd have to picture who would be a fighter in mythology, or sorry, in movies we've seen before. I know, say, okay, so Conan the Barbarian, that's a subclass of a fighter. Okay, that's a barbarian. All right, gotcha. There's ways about that. Then you had the Paladin, Holy Knight. So if you look at King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, right, Lancelot would be considered a Paladin, but King Arthur is a Cavalier. He's the one on the horse with the jousting and the sword fighting on horseback. So there's slight differences. Holy Knight has magical powers. Cavalier has a little different things for fighting abilities. So there's why where some of the differences would be. So it goes on and on. But then, God bless the 80s. For real, God bless the 80s. We got that beautiful cartoon, Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome to the world of iConis. Welcome to the world of Dungeons and Dragons. There we go. And Rod, were you a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, a cartoon?
I was. It was definitely something that I enjoyed watching every time it came on, every Saturday morning when it was on, every week. It was a great way to just broaden your imagination. I was the type of person who grew up around that same time. I was always reading those type of wizards type of books, Lord of the Ring,
right?
Anything that has that type of knightlyhood, King Arthur type of realm, elves, dwarves, anything in that realm. And I know it sounds like I'm putting it together in a separate, but it just like that type of mystical type of imagination where, spells was the leading factor for any type of action. Bravery, like I'm going to go, fight a dragon or anything in that regard. So yes, it was definitely something. That's why I knew I liked, D&D itself, definitely through you and everything along that line.
Right.
But when I started to understand how in tune you have to be, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I would say something, and then Dungeon Master's like, that don't work. And I'm like, but, and I'm like, you know what? I know my lane. I'll just stay in the back, like, I'm by the cart. I'm by the cart with the apple cart guy. Like, yo, we good? Yeah. What's your troops doing? They're going ahead. Let me buy some apples for them. And that's it. That's my role. I'll just chill. All right. You need me? I'm here. Right on.
Right on. So, and that's the whole thing, right? Because the cartoon turned around and debuted in 1983, ran for 3 seasons, 27 episodes, and it had one unreleased episode at the end that where you could find on YouTube right now that they turned around and they did the audio for that episode. The actress who played, the voice actress that played Sheila came back to voice her character, and they got snippets from older episodes to kind of fill it in. And then fans turned around and animated it what the last episode should look like. So for here, and this is what goes into why we're talking about it, or our fan theory about it, is in there were 6 characters. So there were 6 teenagers, and these teenagers went one day to an amusement park, just like a normal regular amusement park, and they went, oh, look, it's the Dungeons and Dragons ride. Let's get on it. And they got on that ride, and while they're on the ride, it's kind of like it's like a roller coaster, but it's going through a tunnel, and then things started happening, and all of a sudden the roller coaster kind of disintegrates, breaks apart, and boom, they get zapped into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. And then on top of they're dressed in their clothes all change. They're standing there in an open desert kind of thing where or forest and caves around, and they're like, what's going on? And they're making noise like, hello, and all of a sudden Tiamat. So Tiamat is the goddess of dragons. So Tiamat has 7 different heads, I believe it is, one for each style of dragon. So the black dragon, silver dragon, gold dragon, and green dragon. They all breathe out different not all red dragon. Red dragon is flames. Green dragon does, I think, like, acid. Black dragon. No, black dragon is acid. Green dragon does poisonous smoke. Yada yada yada. It goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're standing like, oh my gosh, this huge multi-headed dragon is looking at them, called Tiamat, and she's a goddess of dragons. That's their first encounter in this land, and they're standing there. Their clothes are all gone. They're in jeans and t-shirts and so forth,
Right.
with certain colors. And now they're standing there in clothes that are appropriate for the
Time and the
time they're
environment
in.
and the
It's
environment
still the
they were
same
on.
color scheme. So, for example, Hank was in green. Well, then now he's got a green tunic on with tights and brown boots.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "What the heck?" They start to run, and then Dungeon Master is there. And this is the old intro. And Dungeon Master is a little guy, short little guy, white hair, bald, red robe. And he comes up and he's like, "Oh," and he points and he goes, "Ranger." And when he's pointing to each one and telling them what their classes are, he gives them a magical item.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ranger gets the bow, and the Cavalier, which is Eric, gets the shield that makes a force field. And Diana, who's an acrobat, which is a subclass at the time of the thief. So thief acrobat. So she's the acrobat. She gets a staff that can extend into whatever it is. And then Presto, who's into magic, he gets a magic hat that he can pull. Sorry, she gets a magic staff. He gets a magic hat that he can pull, anything he casts a magic, spell of. And then it's got Sheila, who's the thief, who gets a cloak of invisibility. And then her younger brother, Bobby, who's the barbarian, who gets a thunder club. He gets a club, and if he hits on the ground, it causes like a minor earthquake tremor. And then they see this baby unicorn that they namely call Uni. So it's like having a cat and calling it cat, kitten calling it kit. There we go. And that's it. And they rescue Uni, and Uni's able to teleport once if Uni concentrates. So that is pretty much what it is in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons. They get pulled in there, and their whole thing is to help the people in the land and to find a way home back to their present day. That's the whole premise of the show. But now this is the closest thing that we're going to get to Dungeons and Dragons being fleshed out before a movie, before a comic book, anything. That was the first foray that CBS turned around and said, "Hey, we're going to give them this." And I'm like, okay. And it gave you true character classes along with true monsters from the monster manual and some from the Fiend folio. And then you have the main guy there, the main person they're trying to fight, Venger, spirit of vengeance. He had like wings, but he never really flew because he had a horse that was a nightmare, meaning it was a black horse with flaming hooves, flaming eyes. And then he had a shadow fiend that was his minion. So he used to have shadows, literally as it is. It's just a floating shadow that can communicate in the monster manual, but in the Fiend folio, they upped it, the fiend, the shadow fiend. So he got little wings and he got little horns, and that was his sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not a comic sidekick. I mean, like, he was the one to say, "I need you to do this." All right. And he was go and do whatever I had to do. So that was the essence of Dungeons and Dragons. You teleport it, gotta find a way home. Say what?
It's a nice way if you they took some good tropes, gotta say it like that. They took good
Yeah.
tropes in the sense of we have a team now and our mission is to get back home. On the while trying to find that, they ended up helping out people. And a lot of times that whatever crusade, whatever part, like whatever task that they had to do actually helped them get one step closer to, solving the riddle or solving the mystery of why they got there and how to get themselves back. So
Right.
it was a good way. It's a learning. It was a lot of learning, innuendos, just giving you an understanding of how to work together. Because yes, they were friends in the 80s. In 1980, they were friends and everything along that line. All of their friends, and they have, Sheila brings her little baby brother type of scenario. But we're realizing now in this particular realm, they have to work together, work as a successful party to, to basically finish whatever task we put before them not even directly by Dungeon Master. We'll get to that individual very shortly.
Yeah, yeah.
But but the show was it was a good way of showing, like, you know what, we can't just, like, they have to, they got to stretch it as long as it's possible. So you're in a particular realm. You got to help out the people. Help out the people that, of the local land, and in search of getting yourself home. So yeah, it was a great trope, a great uh plot that they put out every single week, and you always ran back to watch it and seeing, oh, how are they going to get through this one now?
Yeah, well, that's it. And that's the beauty of it, of the show. I mean, at the time we didn't have much that was going on,
Hmm.
with Dungeons and Dragons. The show, it was from paper. Yes, there was a movie with Tom Hanks, and it was Tom Hanks' first role. I can't remember the name of the movie right now. That was almost with Dungeons and Dragons, and it started to cause some controversy because of a story it was based off of. It was kind of a true-ish story. Um, you know, and as I said, it was Tom Hanks' first acting role.
Mazes and monsters.
That's it. Thank you. Mazes and Monsters. So Mazes and Monsters, what happened was you had some parents, and they turned around and they said that their son ran away from home, couldn't
Hmm.
find him. And people, there's different versions, but the son ran away from home, is both to commit suicide, and they are blaming Dungeons and Dragons because he started reading it. It looked demonic because it had monsters on the covers of the hardcover rule books, right? So you had the player's handbook, and everyone, if you look it up, you see the player's handbook advanced edition. You see there's a big giant demon on there, statue of a demon, but you see the
Hmm.
party members are like kind of looting the gems out of its eyes. Okay, so parents saw that, went, oh my gosh, it's demon worshiping. Don't want that. Didn't understand the concept. Their kid goes missing and says, "Oh, I ran away from home because I was told to do so. I was on a quest." Blah 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 blah. Instead of the parents really looking at the mental health of that child, and when I say child, I mean the person was a teenager. When instead of looking at the mental health of their child, they turned around and said, "Oh, it was Dungeons and Dragons that influenced this
Hmm.
person to do it." And then at one point, I think the person said he ran away from home, and then they found him later on. They couldn't find him, and then they found him, I think, living in a sewer or something like that. Anyways, then this parlayed into a book, which got put into a TV movie, which was called Mazes and Monsters, and it was Tom Hanks' first acting role back then. But this brought so much negativity heat to it. I remember my parents saying, my mom was like, "Barry, I just heard this story. You got to stop playing that game. We got to throw in all the books." And I'm like, "No, you're not throwing all these books. These books cost me like 20 something, $30 a piece.
Hmm.
That's a lot of money." And I go,
Just
"What do you mean demon worshiping? Where do you get that from?" Keep in mind, this is before the internet. So can you imagine if the internet existed when that happened?
hard facts.
Yeah.
Hard facts.
So this was a lot of going back and forth. And at one point, I used to be angry at Tom Hanks. Like, how can you do this role to turn around and you criticize a game and make it put it in a bad light? Because in the movie, he plays a dungeon master with a group of friends. They grow up. He has a nervous breakdown. He never gets out of that mindset that he's not 14, 15 anymore. His friends
Hmm.
have moved on. They've gotten married. And then he's living in a home, and the mother of Tom Hanks's character says, "Look, you got to come and visit him, at least to say hi." And he goes, "Okay, one more quest." And then he takes it and he goes on playing it like he's stolen the quest. He dresses in a long robe. He's walking through the city of New York, and he walks to the top of the building believing that he has a ring of flight or a robe of flight, something like that. He's almost ready to walk off the top of this building when his friends had to kind of go and retrace the steps and find him and talk him down. Right. Dungeons and Dragons will never make you do that. Okay. Okay. There's other things in life that will make you do that. And that's like substance abuse. If you have that, please reach out to someone, get some help. There's more to life than
100%.
what you can put into your system. Got it. All right. That's my only serious note there. But that's what it came down to. Now, because a lot of parents either saw the synopsis of that,
Hmm.
in TV Guide, that's to show you how far back we're going. They heard about it from a friend, like a Ferris Bueller Day Off moment. Then, and every parent turned around and said, "Does your son play Dungeons and Dragons?" And then it was on the news too. It was almost like every news outlet at the time was Fox News, giving out that misinformation to a moment. Research your stuff. Okay, so it made it harder, and at one point it passed. It passed,
Hmm.
but that was the only thing. So it was either the game. So before the Dungeons and Dragons TV cartoon came out, we had to deal with mazes and monsters. So Dungeons and Dragons started to show this in a positive light as a Saturday morning cartoon, which Saturday morning cartoons are got to go through so much censorship that parents had to say, "Oh, maybe it's not as bad as we thought." Oh,
Well, yeah. I mean, during those times, I mean, you got to look at it definitely in the 80s, the 70s, and 80s, and even in the 90s. That whenever there's something that is uncomfortable, it is different, it's always going to be targeted.
yeah,
It's now showing people in the limelight. They think it's satanic. They think it's pornographic because you're seeing individuals drawn out to be in what they would consider you know skimpy clothes, but it's not skimpy
yeah,
clothes per se, but it's as part of the character that was portrayed. This is where everybody was seeing, again, having people who dressed up like wizards thinking, oh, someone's losing it. Really? Magic is real? Magic is not real, son. You shouldn't be thinking about that. But not accepting the imagination that this game
yes,
portrayed. So it was always like that. So yeah, I mean, I'll even say for myself in the sense of like parlaying to like He-Man and stuff like that. My brother,
right,
my mother, no, time out on He-Man. I'm like, He-Man? You got Skeletor, evil look and everything like that.
yeah,
So you can see where in that time frame at that time, that anything that was different and was unacceptable, people just didn't understand it and realizing that it's such a great craze. And that was the main thing. If D&D had started off and had become just like, a game like it's not everybody has it, not a lot of people are watching it or using it, it probably would have got swept under the rug
yes,
because of the craze, because of the success of Dungeon and Dragon. That's what turned people's heads like, why is nearly every Toys R Us and places being sold out for this particular item? Why are people going after this game so hard? Why? We need to investigate, and just thought of it in a negative light. So this is now, you can see why Hollywood and like, oh, people are going after D&D. Let's make a movie about it. Lasers and monsters. And now everybody start losing their mind, thinking, how can you do this? And
yeah.
it just
It's
went down the crazy pipe. That's all.
it did, and we're not going to get off topic, but but I mean,
Mhm.
it's all part of the genre of what we're building to, right? So now they got the cartoon. The cartoons come out. The cartoon season one, big success. People are loving it.
Mhm.
Everyone's on board. The sales are going up. Now, there's a group of fans, and there's some people that love the cartoon who play
Mhm.
Dungeons and Dragons, and there's others that don't that play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree, but understand that the overall thing of what it was doing was saying, "Hey, here are these kids in the air quotes real world, teleported into a fantasy world." And this is what they got to do. They got to do these quests to go forward. And they're not strong enough to fight Venger and Tiamat.
By
Those two
themselves.
are mortal enemies. They have to get stronger. And if you play Dungeons and Dragons or you play any role
Mm.
playing game, there's always that famous word levels. What level is your character? So you got to start off and get a higher level and a higher level and a higher level. And every level you go up, you get a higher hit points.
Right?
You might be able to put points in your abilities to make you better. You might get certain magic. You might get an extra attack per round.
Yeah.
You get all this stuff as you
Yep.
get from level zero. Because some places don't,
Start
some
off.
DMs use level zero and some don't. Everyone generally starts
Okay.
with level one, and then you go up to what that class is. And once you make the max, then you just automatically keep progressing. But if you get to that max level, woo, you was a tank. So that's what it
Mm.
was. These kids are in there. They are knobs. They're level one. Let's just go with that. They're going like level 0 to 1. Dungeon Master gives them the items. Away you go, and you'll find your way home. Now, throughout the series, each person has their own kind of thing. So you got Hank the Ranger, who is the natural born leader of the group.
Hmm.
And then you have who he clashes with is Eric the Cavalier. Now, Eric comes from a more posh family, so he's a little bit snobby. And he's always got to kind of check he doesn't want to be the hero, but at the same time, he wants to be the leader. But Hank is more
Hmm.
fearless, and Eric is like, well, I'll just kind of defend myself because so they have their characteristics do match their character classes
Right.
to a certain degree. Bobby, he's 9 years old, right? In this, I know, I think he's 9, 10 years old. And he turns around, he's got a club, and he's running around saying, yeah, I'm gonna just start swigging first. You get a 9-year-old upset, 10-year-old upset, They just want to fight. So that's Bobby. He clearly fit the whole barbarian role, and everyone
100%.
had their strong points and some of their weaknesses that go through. So as we watch this, you realize, okay, well, in the cartoon, now let's take it from the cartoon sense. They're transported over. They've been there for days and weeks and months, and time is passing by as they're going through these things, and they meet other, notable Dungeons and Dragon characters, monsters, or people would fit in that world. I mean, they ran into, or they totally thought they ran into, but let's just say they ran into Merlin. Yes, that Merlin from, the Round Table, King Arthur, and so forth, who we mentioned before. They ran into different character classes. So they ran into Warduke. Who is he, an evil fighter, or is he an anti-paladin? Which could be both, because as a anti-paladin, you never see their faces, because it could either be the person be very beautiful or they're extremely ugly. So he always had his face hidden because he always thought he had a grotesque face. Well, that's Warduke. Wish we saw more of the character. They made some character classes. One sounded so cool, called the Celestial Knight. I'm like, oh, okay, I want to see this one. But then you see like a Beholder. You've seen dragons. You see lizardmen, and that was the one they fought the most. And these are characters that are classes or races that do exist within that world. Now, I think it was within that whole series, it was 8 times they almost made it back home. One time they made it, Rod. One time they made it back to Earth. And they were like, yeah. And they got teleported back to the amusement park, the land of Dungeons and Dragons. They've been gone for, according to them, months. They made it back. And they looked at it, it's like, wait a minute, it's nighttime. So there they discovered that time passes differently in Dungeons and Dragons than it does on Earth. So where they're gone for months, it's only been maybe in 2 hours. A couple hours. Where the park was open and then the park is now closed. Not 2 days later, it's still within the same day. And then Venger makes it over. And he's like, I'm going to, run rampant on Earth. And they're like, no, we got to lure him back to the land of Dungeons and Dragons to save Earth. And they sacrifice themselves that way. And people are always saying, I had a discussion recently, why did Dungeon Master not just send them home? Fair question.
Yeah. I mean, we will understand towards the end of it that he had his own motive. The Dungeon Master always seemed to have his own criteria motives, but if you know the game, that's really is the mindset of the Dungeon Master. He's leading you on a quest. You don't know what the quest is. The Dungeon Master knows. He already knows the beginning of end. You started here. I know where I want you guys to be. I'm going to take you along a path. We're going to go here and there to there, but I know at the end of the day, I need you guys at point B.
Yes.
So this is why I can understand why those who don't, or not familiar with the game, but even then you're watching the game, watching the cartoon, and you're like, why won't he just send them home? You seem to love these kids like your own. Send them home.
Send them home.
Exactly. They're missing fries. They're missing their home fries. Send them home. I know what a hot dog is. Send them home. No, you want to keep. I'm leery about you, Dungeon Master. I'm leery. What are your motives?
Exactly. And I think if they got that last episode out, it would make sense. If they recovered it earlier, it might make sense. But I understand they wrapped it up, and it would have been nice if they allowed them to do that. The show got canceled before that last episode get out. CBS went, no, we're good. I'm like, one more episode would have made this the perfect full circle and open up questions, which it does. So they go through, they got their missions. There's times to get, it's like, hey, either we save this village or we go home. But each time Dungeon Master says, you're not strong enough yet. As a Dungeon Master, and here's beautiful. My favorite adventure I like to play in Dungeons and Dragons is called Temple of Elemental Evil. Your party arrives in this town. There's in the distance, there's a broken down plot of land and castle, and it's a keep, and it's a gateway into this temple. And the villagers are always saying, hey, no one goes there. That's pure evil. There's something wrong there. It's like pure evil that comes out of there. Things don't grow around there. We hear weird noises. We would love to say someone go in there and take care of this. Who's going to be the brave adventurer? And you and your party have 8 people, suggested party of 8 to 10 people kind of thing, and you think that's a lot, but that module is tough. And you walk in there at level 1, and you could walk out level 8 or higher, because you have to go in, come out, do floor by floor, sometimes a part of a room. It's just that tough. So because you're not strong enough yet to deal with the final monster in there, and that had some tough rooms in there. I remember it. I was I want to play a paladin, a holy knight in a temple of elemental evil. It's on. Oh, it was on. So when you get in there and you see that he's saying you're not strong enough yet, and you put it right, Dungeon Master he does have his motive. Now, what I'll go back and say this about the series, and I thought was genius, and I'll say this about the time. Time passes a little bit different, right? How many times, to our listeners, our viewers, you are playing a video game, a role-playing game, whatever, and next thing you know, someone goes, oh my gosh, look at the time. And you're like, wait a minute, we've done 2 rooms, and you're trying to tell me 3 hours have gone by?
Right.
Because you lose track of time. When you're playing a video game, how many times, as a parent, you walk in there and you tell your child, hey, you still playing this game? And they look at it like, oh my gosh, what time is it? I've been playing this long? Or as a parent, maybe, who has your own game system, and you're playing games, or you remember playing games, you come across that same thing. You lose track of time. Meaning that you might think, oh, I've only been playing this game for an hour, and then you look at your watch or the clock, and next thing you know, you're hearing, no, you've been playing this for 4 hours.
4 hours later.
Exactly. 4 hours later. And so that, with the Dungeon Dragon going into another realm and time passing differently, that to me signified when you're in Dungeons and Dragons 100%. And you're playing the game, you don't realize how fast how the time goes as opposed to reality. So I liked that was there. I think that was something that should have been called out a long time ago. Now we get down to it, and in the last episode, and this is where the theory's about to come in, so hold on tight. In the last episode that was not aired, that you could see on YouTube here, or if you're listening to it on a podcast, you can always look it up. Finally, you find out what's going on. So they get stronger. Finally, they've had fights amongst themselves, amongst the team. Sometimes they split up, they get back together. One wants to stay behind and learn, and then they get back together. As you were saying, Rod, it's about unity. And they get there to that last point, and it turns around, and they find out that Venger is Dungeon Master's son. Now, we know Venger has a sister who went evil, but they really focus on Venger, and you find out that's Dungeon Master's son. So Dungeon Master has a son and a daughter, but it really focused more on the son. And that's why I said there's still more story to tell. And they get there, there's the big fight, and instead of trying to destroy Venger, they realize, wait a minute, Dungeon Master, you're making us strong enough that we could fight him and try to bring him back to the side of light. Dungeon Master's whole goal was bringing these kids over to test them, to see if they were worthy enough that they will not stray from the path to go to evil like his son did, because his son was supposed to be his successor as a Dungeon Master, because Dungeon Master wanted to retire. He hit that age. But when he turned around and started showing that to his son got caught up with the evil of the world and was tempted, the power of it, and was tempted. And instead of wanting to be a Dungeon Master, he wanted to rule. And this is where his skin changed that pale white, and he got the horn. And so he was working with a demon that kind of seduced him to the dark side, for lack of a better word, I know. So henceforth, Venger, that's where he came about. And they get into this fight. They get into a pretty big fight, and it's in a castle, and this guy opens a doorway finally to home. So when the fight breaks out, everything stops. They're able to destroy the horn on his head and get him expunged, so to speak. And he finally realizes, like, hey, you know what? I should be good. I'm sorry, Dad. Here I am. I will carry on. And you see him. He changes back to more of a human form. He has like black hair, a slick back, human complexion. He loses the fangs, and he gets an exact outfit like his dad, Dungeon Master. And he's taller, so he still has that height there. And he smiles. And the beauty of this, the voice actor for this character was Peter
Hmm.
Cullen, who was the voice of
Hmm.
Optimus Prime.
Let's go. Let's go.
Right? That's the voice of childhood right there. And he turns around, comes out, and says, "Okay, fine." And he's like, "Well, And then as their final reward, Dungeon Master's like, "Thank you for saving my son. I know I've showed you the way home. Here it is. This is truly the way home. You won't be in the land of Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Go ahead. Thank you so much. You guys are true heroes. This was always your quest, not the little ones. It was through the day, over time, it was building up your skill set, your character, and getting you ready for this moment.
Hmm.
You can go home." And the whole party turns around and says, "Finally, back home. Can't wait to see my parents, my friends, hot dogs and hamburgers, my favorite eateries, so forth like that." And they're stepping through, and then presto says, "Hey, it's been real, but I'm going to stay." And it's a heartfelt moment. Goodbye. Presto was always insecure. He felt like he didn't fit in. He felt in the land of Dungeons and Dragons, that was his calling, that he can really make a difference there than going back to the reality of being the geeky bullied person. He was making a difference, and he wasn't going back home. And they try to convince him, saying, "We all came together, we all come home together." And Sheila was like, "Look, I got to get Bobby back home to my parents." Hank is like, "I got to get home." Eric is like, "Oh, I'm going home no matter what, man. You want to stay?"
Yep.
Diane, all of them. So they gave their goodbyes, and it kind of wraps up nicely because the whole time they had Uni the unicorn, so they couldn't bring Uni back to our world.
Hmm.
So at this point, Uni stays with Presto. Presto wants to become a really good, great magic user. And that's where he felt that he belonged. And he goes, "If I have to come back, I can come and visit one time." But, it's kind of implied, but it's not really vocalized.
Right.
And Dungeon Master's like, "Hey, okay, no problem. That's what you want to do. I'll make sure that he's taken care of." And that's how they end that last episode. So it's bittersweet that they finally get home. But when they get home, once again, not much time has passed by.
Right.
The amusement park, I think, is just opening. So it looked like they just pulled an all-nighter. So then they get home and probably were happy they got home. Yeah. They probably get grounded for being out all night past curfew, probably making their parents worry because there's no cell phones. And these kids were 14. All of them were like 14, right? And I'll say this because there's an IDW comic book that's out right now called Dungeons and Dragons talking about their adventures. And it says all their ages. And it put them all at 14, with one of them being 15 and Bobby being 9. Right? So they're making that, and it's continuing from the cartoon left off, but minus the last episode. They're acting like the last episode never the unaired episode never happened. So it was a divergent in the timeline. So here's my thing. So Presto stays. Let's go with this one, Rod. Presto stays. Those kids ain't going back, right? For the time being.
No. Right.
One, that was a really heart-wrenching episode. And two, what did a kid say about Presto to his parents?
Very, very good question. Because they're all friends. Someone had to take the initiative to go. So I can see everybody minus Eric going to Presto's house and saying, "Mrs. Presto, Hank will take the lead. Presto, we had an adventure. We were away. And we've gone to another land. Okay, you're gone a little delusional. Maybe the sun got you while you guys were at Six Flags. It's okay. You had a little sunstroke. Where's my son? Where's my son?" And then you have to break it down. It's now, that is part of the question or part of the statement. They mention it to Presto's parents. The reality starts to kick in. My kids run away, or someone kidnap my kid. That's a reality conversation that you'd be like saying, how do they cope with now the authorities now coming into play? Okay.
Yes.
You guys were the last ones to see this individual.
Yes.
Young Preston was with you guys yesterday at the park. Tell us what happened. You guys arrived there at 9:00. Okay, so tell me what happened. What did you guys do? We start pulling some castle. Put you in the in the examining room and like, okay, lights on you. So you were out there 2 days ago. Where's Presto? What happened? Talk to me about it. And then everybody goes into a story, starts separating the kids, and then you start hearing, okay, so all right, Bobby, you're the youngest. Tell me what happened. Don't worry about it. Just tell me. We'll get you some candy, get you a burger, and everything like that. I think he's gonna say something different. He starts talking about, well, I left my unicorn back. Your unicorn? I was a barbarian. What are you talking about? We had adventures. The son got to the boy. The son got to the man, the little one.
Right.
Let's go to his sister. And then everybody starts telling similar stories. This is where it's going to get very interesting. How does someone try to not defy, but how does someone try to distinguish what's real and what's fiction coming from these kids' voice when they're saying something so similar? What are you guys talking about? And your stories are very detailed. So yeah, it would be a very interesting way to segue back into the real life of the show. Okay, this is what really happens. Let's talk about it.
Right, because first of all, then I'll say this: They've come back in their normal. Once they walk through that portal, they come back in street clothes. They don't have the magical weapons and gear and items that they were using because it was left in the land of Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So they have none of that to show. They have nothing to show but their story, and they know they're telling the truth. But as an adult, are you really going to want to hear that your kid is in a different dimension from other kids that are 14? It's like you're letting your imagination run wild.
Right.
And the only sliver of a chance saving grace for them would be the time they came over and Venger came through. What I mean by that is
thinking that, yep.
Right. At an amusement park, at a very big amusement park, you'll have security cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Did the security camera pick any of that up to see Venger on his flying horse, his flying nightmare, and said, that ain't part of the ride? Because it came over and it was after hours when it was closed. Did a security guard see something and think, if I tell somebody what I just saw, no one's gonna believe me?
Right. I'm gonna lose my job, and that's it.
Exactly. They're gonna think I was on something. Who's gonna believe them? You know.
And you brought up a good point in the sense of the time dilation of that, because yes, they came back over, and when they came back over, it was a nighttime. So we're going to go with the assumption that this was all overnight. Yeah. So the 12 hours from the time they left. Because they left during the day, or at least they left when there was light. So we will say, let's just be nice and say it's evening time. Maybe it's like 6 o'clock. You still have some sunlight. 6 to 8, whatever the case be. That happened. And then later on at night, in our world, 1 o'clock in the morning, portal open, and you see this guy in a red cloak, flying this Pegasus, black nightmare, flying through the air, spitting fire. Like, what? We didn't see nothing, right? No, we didn't see nothing. Everything's okay? Yeah. Just put out the fire over there by the Whirlyborough game. Yeah. We just say some technical difficulties and spark the fire, and we put it out. Everything's good. Back, write up a little report. System exploded. We saw it on camera. No, we didn't see it on camera. Scratch that.
Right. Of course, because let's put it this way. If it was me and you working security and we saw this come through, we would look at each other going, did you see what I just saw? Yep.
I ain't seen nothing.
Are you going to write a report about it? Nope. Did anything get destroyed or blown up? Nope. We going to leave it as is. Anything happen during your shift, Carter and Carter? Nope. And we go we'll talk to each other going, I can't believe what I saw, and who's going to believe us?
Exactly.
And there's no proof unless it's caught on film.
So I've always thought it'll be interesting in the sense of, it's kind of bringing back the recollection now that after this final episode, they come back, whatever the case would be. Then they have a mysterious figure who walks in up to the door a couple months later. Can we say months later? Because of time dilation is different and everything.
Right.
Like that.
So for them, it could be a couple of days later.
right, we'll say days later. We'll say days later type of scenario. All you see is this this older gentleman, short older gentleman, come knock on your door with a nice big rim hat, and then you look up and you like say, "Dungeon Master? Yes, Cavalier. Let me. Petro's okay, whatever the case to be, but
Yeah,
he'll be
yeah,
the only proof that something actually happened." And then they saying, look, this is the guy we were with. Police come to the door. Dungeon Master gone. Dang it!
yeah.
You left.
Right. Well, you see, and I was going to go a step further. Maybe instead of it being Dungeon Master, maybe him, Presto, sitting there might say, "Hey, I miss my
Well, that's another
friends.
thing.
Yeah, and my family. I should at least tell them I'm okay." So
Mm-hmm.
he might be there for what could be his time, accelerated time. Us, it could be like 2 days. It could be if they were gone 12 hours and they had that much adventures in 12 hours. Can you imagine if he was gone a week our time or 2 weeks
Right,
our time? So when he comes back, he's a grown man,
right. About to
right?
say.
I'm not sure if he's still going to grow the same way, if time's going to affect him while he's there, and he's going to age according to the role that he's in, and then come back. And then when he comes back, he's an older man. Like, I mean, I say he could be in his 20s, so he can come back and be like, to him, he might age 10 years, so he might come back at 24. He will go
Mm-hmm.
back and is like, "Hey, Eric, hey, Hank." There's like, "Oh, here's, hey, Eric, hey, Hank." And he's like, "Who's this guy that knows us? Like, we're 14-year-olds. Hey, this man is calling out our name. This young man. Wait a minute. He looks like Presto's dad." It's like, "Wait a minute. No, no, it's not my dad. It's me, Presto." "Dude, what happened?" "Well, I stayed an extra, I was there a couple of years." "Dude, you're only been gone a week at a time." "Oh, yeah, I know. And since I've aged,
Right.
this is what I look like now. I got to go and talk to my mom and dad." And then
Yeah.
him coming back would be proof that, hey, he disappeared looking one age and he came back looking 10 years older. But the whole time, his friends were in the hot seat for that. So that's one of my theories. Can that
Well,
happen?
definitely. And you know what? The segue of that, we've seen that before.
Uh-huh.
Flight of the Navigator.
Yes. Yes.
Flight of the
Yes.
Navigator was that exact template of someone future jumping in a sense, like 10 years. And basically he was still looking like a young man. So we'll do that reverse. So yep, Flight of Navigator it was just basically the same 80s. Oh, but I love the stories in the 80s.
Of course. Of course. They didn't reboot everything. They just did it. So and that's one of my theories. Like, okay, does he? So do you? I don't know if anyone listening and watching, did you prefer the ending where they were just how the series ended on TV, where they were still trapped in the land of Dungeons and Dragons, or do you like the ending where they all came home except for Presto, who stayed there, and what happened to him since then? Right, because what was happening in the real world, Presto was having his own adventures,
Right.
and Dungeon Master always seemed to always show up and disappear, show up and disappear. So were they other people? Because if Dungeon
And
Master brought in that group of kids, did he bring in other people from, let's say, Earth,
same realm. Yep.
same realm, Earth realm, into the land of Dungeons and Dragons
Yep.
to deal with, like how there's different teams of Power Rangers, even though they didn't act at the same time at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, one team always handed the baton off to another team. But maybe Dungeon Master, as a Dungeon Master, you can run more than one party. So
And,
was
and the,
Dungeon Master running another couple of parties of different people at the same time, that when they all came back to Earth, that it's like, hey, well, we're American, and it's like, oh, look, there's some kids from Canada, there's some kids from Japan, there's some kids from China,
100%. 100%.
that all went over. And when they can do their own convention of saying, yeah, no one believed us, but I was there. I was this character class. I was this character class. Yeah, we all dealt with Dungeon Master. Some of us failed in our mission. Some of us decided maybe to stay there. Some of us turned evil and wanted to join Venger.
Listen,
Maybe
I will,
Ward
I will,
Duke was from Earth.
well, listen, I will definitely agree with that because, listen, if you're going to, Dungeon Master is pulling this party in
Yeah,
to help save his son.
right.
And you're absolutely correct. He could have been, many times you see him talking to our party and then
Mm-hmm.
disappear. He can go to someone else. Now, if Dungeon Master is thinking, hopefully he understand, there's not like a tablet, but there's a tale of visitors from another realm who's able to lighten the darkness at a certain darkest time. So maybe he realized, let me get a couple of different parties. They
Uh-huh.
don't know about each other. And he's just going that hopefully one of the 5 parties is going to help save my son. And that's it. So we just
Preach.
happen to have watched the North American team North America to save Avenger and turn him back into Dungeon Master's son. Now, if that's the case, Dungeon Master now can just say, "You guys, great, thank you for bringing back my son. Cool. You're on your way. Rest of you here? Okay, listen, I'll be right back. I got something else to do." And before Presto would, do the old Batman kind of was there.
Yeah.
Now he's not there. Disappear. Dungeon Master comes now to Team Canada or someone else like saying, "Listen, we're good. Thank you. Here's your way to go home." But. And even then, most times, depending, you won't know until the very end that your quest is done. So
Yes.
for whatever adventure each other team could have been doing, Dungeon Master could have said, "Thank you, young ones. Thank you for helping me. Your quest is fulfilled. You have saved the land again. Let me open a portal back to your world. Are you sure? We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much." Zoom. And these kids thinking that they've done well, not knowing that, Team America saved the world again.
America. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to take that one step even further, just like a random thought. We know at one point they introduced Venger's sister, Dungeon Master's daughter. So to your point, Rod, one team might have been taking care of Venger. Another team from another part of the world could have been taking care of battling his sister.
Yep.
Trying to do the exact same thing. Don't know how many other kids he had. So that to me is two teams, operating the same method of operation, but maybe differently. Maybe they don't have a cavalier. Maybe they have a paladin, and maybe they have a bard, and maybe they have a druid. Okay, because there's so many more character classes that we haven't even
100%.
discussed yet.
100%.
So it goes on. Maybe they have a duelist, right? And if you think what the duelist is a Zorro character. If you remember Zorro would be considered a duelist. Okay, there we go. Maybe one of them is a monk, which would be and once again, for our listeners, if you're not familiar, a monk in Dungeons and Dragons is a martial artist, not seen as a monk, walking around
fire type of
thing. Silence.
Not a fire.
And Shaolin monk. There we go. So there could be other character classes out there. One dealing with a sister, one dealing with a son. Shoot, let's turn around. Maybe Dungeon Master, you can't have kids without a significant other. So he had to have a wife, a girlfriend. They had to have a mother. And I'm not saying the mother's evil, but maybe she's got her own quest. So maybe Dungeon Master is dealing with the kids for the son. Maybe his wife has brought in another team to deal with the daughter. Okay. All right. There's a lot of possibilities. So
there's a lot of possibilities. You can even see, like, as an example, even in season 2, number 14, season 2,
right.
There was our episode 1, season 2. There's a chance where the kids meet an individual by the name of Terry, a lost child like themselves who is also a clairvoyant who can dream the future. So this is now saying Dungeon Master is pulling people from different part of the world to achieve his particular quest. And, as an example for what we're saying, like the possibilities, the possibilities actually is there. The possibilities are there.
See, and I like that ending where it would add more storytelling that can still carry on, right? Where they actually do get home instead of being left there. I know that's it. The IDW comic takes off when they're still there, and that last episode never happened. Now, the reason I mention this is because now there's still 2 ways to go about it. So we got left, they get home, Presto stays, right? They never make it back home. And now let's bring it back to the Dungeons and Dragon movie that just came out with Chris Pine and the rest of the cast that were in that movie, right? That's just more of a recent movie. These characters from the cartoon have a cameo in it. So let me backtrack for half a second. First live action cameo of the Dungeons and Dragon characters was a car commercial over in Australia.
Right.
And they're fighting Venger and Dungeon Master's there, and they have all of them live action dressed up, and they have to make an escape, and they all jump in this little hatchback car and they drive away. And that's a commercial that they did overseas. I believe it was an Australian commercial, but it looked, the characters, the down to the weapons, the costumes, the actors they selected were dead on fan casting for
Mm-hmm.
that commercial.
Yep.
Yeah. So now, okay, I know that was a car commercial, but that made me excited of saying, hey, maybe we can do something live action. And then the live action movie comes out, and they got characters that didn't look exactly like the what we remember in the Saturday morning cartoon, but you can recognize them by their outfits. They make two appearances, if I remember right, near the end of the Dungeon and Dragon movie, where they have to do a competition going through a maze. You see them there first in the background, and
Mm-hmm.
then when Chris Pine and the rest of the team are running around doing their thing, they see these group of adventurers trapped inside of a cage that's inside of the maze, and it's all those characters. The only difference is they are older. So
Mm-hmm.
Eric, if you look at Eric, Eric's got a more of a darker hue to his skin. So Eric the Cavalier. So did they make him Hispanic? Did they make him Muslim, Indian? And I'm not saying anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that's how he looked. Bobby was the one that if you see it,
Right.
pay attention to the actor that's playing Bobby. Bobby, height wise, makes sense to the rest of the party. He's shorter than the rest of them. But when they zoom in, Bobby doesn't look like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old. Bobby looks like a man. Bobby, he's got the structure of a man. He's got the physical, he's buff as a man now, as a barbarian,
Mm-hmm.
which got me thinking, what happened? And that's going with, let's say, the left way. They get home. They're doing their thing. Presto comes for them instead of Dungeon Master saying, hey guys, I need you to come back and help me with something here. And he brings them back in time to time for certain adventures. So they've aged naturally on Earth Realm.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings them back in to help out with certain adventures that, just like Power Rangers get called on to fight the good fight, they get called in to fight the good fight in the Dungeons and Dragon movie. So this is why Bobby looks older. This is why all of them look older at this point, but they understand that world very well. So they get their looks back, they get their weapons back, and they go forward, continuing from the level you're at. Right.
Right.
So that's one way, which I'd like to think is I'm leaning more that side. Now on the right way, the right hand side, it's more they never left, and
Mm-hmm.
they've aged. They've been there that long that they've aged. And to me, I find that a little bit more sad, because that means Dungeon Master never got them home.
Right.
Venger is still running around. Even maybe they defeated Venger, but they've never got home. So Dungeon Master's still kind of playing games with them, which it seems a little bit sadistic, because
Mm-hmm.
they've not seen their loved ones, their friends,
Right.
and they've been stuck there the whole time. It's gonna almost cause mental. It's a mental health issue as I look at it, because you're going to be
Oh,
depressed. If you're
completely.
yanked and kidnapped away from where it's like a Stockholm syndrome. You've been kidnapped.
Hmm.
You've been promised to get home, never got
This is
home,
the thing. This is the thing.
right? So
Any
I
any
hope that
any
they
light
got
of
home and then came back.
completely. I would just say any thought, any sliver of hope keeps getting diminished every few months. Now turns into years. Now, yes, this is where it's great that they're among themselves. They basically tightened their bond. They've tightened their bond for their party, but knowing that they accepted the fact that they're not going home. That's a painful thing to feel that a dungeon master really did that. So I would like it like you. I would definitely like it that they did make it home.
Mm-hmm.
I have again other theories. You talking about having Presto come back and pulls
Mm-hmm.
them in. I would have Venger, who is now the new dungeon master.
Right.
Something happens in the realm, and he has to now bring in a new set of warriors, a new team, and bring them in. So we can at least show some type of reference to the
Yeah.
cartoon that we knew, and at least say he makes reference. My father had pulled in uh six six um six individuals from your world to help him on a quest to save me. I now need to call upon the Earth realm again, and I've chosen you six. Bam, and bring them in. That to me would be to me how we can extend the storyline right now. Not a reboot. This is
No,
just
no, no,
extending on
not a
just
reboot.
because extending on the continuum of the story that we've grown up, and literally this is where you can segue off. Maybe they'll even make a little clip and show those individuals that we saw in Dungeon and Dragon the movie and actually gave them a portal home. Let's close up that storyline and give them an opportunity to go home. And then something happens later that you need to come with a new set of individuals.
Absolutely. It would be, as I call it, as I refer to everything now, Picard season 3, right? Let those characters get home. You want to have a legacy going on. You want to start new adventures in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons. And what I like, like I said, in the IDW comic book, they turn around and they actually say, okay, it's not the realm of Dungeons and Dragons. They're in Forgotten Realms. And if you read issue number 1, they're going to known places. So we're going Forgotten Realms, which everyone knows. And if you're in Forgotten Realms, that opens you up to running into a lot other characters. So if you are into the Crystal Shard characters, that's Dritz Duunderin and Bronner the Dwarf and the rest of them, Canterbury, you're into all those characters. They are in that Forgotten Realms world. That's where they start off from. Everyone converges at one point in Waterdeep. The Waterdeep is probably the most popular city in Forgotten Realms, Dungeons and Dragons. And those characters end up in Waterdeep. So we know the movie put the characters through Waterdeep. D&D, IDW saying, the characters are going to be Waterdeep, Forgotten Realms. So there's a lot of crisscross over applesauce. Here we go. That can happen. To your point, I would bring in some of the original characters as segues. I would probably keep Uni in the series, but age Uni, so Uni's no more a baby, and then new characters are teaming up with Uni to continue on. And maybe, as I said, the new dungeon master, Venger, who is the new dungeon master, would say, hey, well, look, guys, bring in the old team. These are the individuals before. Hey, guys, you know what? Maybe my dad's at that time. He's about to pass on to another. Come and say your goodbyes. Something happens. Dang it, that other team never was able to stop my sister. I need a new team to guide you guys, like how you helped me to stop my sister. And by the way, don't worry, this time we're bringing in some backup. I'm getting mom.
Let's even take it to another level.
Do it.
Venger comes back and he finds all the individual ones. Now they're older and realizing you helped my father. I need another set. What are your children doing?
Yes.
Have any kids? Because at this point now, you will have the children who I'm sure each of the 5 that returned
yes
have relayed that story. Probably saying it that is real life what happened, but you realize your children will not accept it. So you have to say it in a tale. You have to say it in a story. So your kids now, their kids will be thinking like, oh, that's the story my dad had been telling me all this time. Oh, I can tell you, the amount of stories you told me. Oh, look, he's been writing a book about that.
Right. See, that's what I was going to say.
They all come back together, realizing let's just be more very fine tuned and just say, hey, they came back to a world that doesn't have Dungeon and Dragon. Let's just say they come back to Earthrealm and there's no actual toy, game, anything with Dungeon and Dragon. They now get older and realizing, the adventures we've been through. You know that they're talking about with drifts and stuff like that. I think we should put all our stories together and make a business out of that. Call it Dungeon and Dragon. I'm just saying that would be hilarious if they did that. Now they're living off the calf of the adventures. And now Venger comes back saying, you're needed again. Listen, I'm old. I'm about killing. I can't do that stuff like I could anymore. But my kids, healthy and strong.
So hold on, let me get it straight. So you're trying to say that these guys go take over as kids, go to land of Dungeons and Dragons, Forgotten Realms, live all these adventures, then come back. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't exist here. And they turn around and make a company and start. So you're trying to say that could possibly that Gary Garrix, who created Dungeons and Dragons, one of the founders of Dungeons and Dragons, might have lived this in a different dimension, came back here, and then turned his adventures into a game, into TV series, into movies, and just playing it out. And it's almost like a full circle. There we go. There we go.
this as the close, the NDA. He can't speak.
Right.
He can't
make Gary Garrix. Is he? Gary and Aaron. So who's the Cavalier and which one's the Ranger?
Listen, we don't know. He can't deny or approve to what has happened. I'm just saying that I made an item in the early 70s, and something could have happened.
Okay.
Something could happen.
Something could happen. Okay. So we're going off of that. Yeah. All right. So he could have been Gary Garrix and his partner, as a could have been the
The
could have been
originator.
right. Ooh wee. All right then. Well, I like how this episode goes. So let us know what you think of Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone listening and watching, were you a fan of it? Did you play it? Did you play Basic, Advanced? Are you playing the 5th edition right now? Are you ready for the new rules? What do you like? Don't like? Let us know. And did you play other tabletop role playing games? I know I played a lot of them. So I mean I got brought in with Dungeons and Dragons, and then of course how my mind goes. I like the future stuff. So I played Gamma World, I played Traveler, I played Top Secret. Out of those ones on the side, and there was oh my god, not boot. I'm saying bootleg, but it's not bootleg. It was a cowboy one. I'm forgetting. Once again, my name is going. I know there's Hero Quest that's very popular. I still have that board game, but it was one on was it bootleg? Not Boot Hill. Thank you. Boot Hill was a role playing, very popular Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing, like fantasy role playing with dice and stats and so forth like that. But you're a cowboy. I don't want to be a cowboy. Mama, don't let your sons grow up to be cowboys. Unless they're playing a tabletop game, then no one gets hurt because there's no bull. If you're bull riding, just gotta make sure you don't roll a 1. Don't roll the 1. Sweet. Any last words, Rod? What about you, man? Did you play any of the other role-playing games by chance?
You know what? I will admit I did not. I know my introduction was to role-playing with you and everything like that. I had a life. You're hilarious. I wish I
was a shut-in.
I was the next shut-in in the next room. Just give me the books. I'll just read. And I just read. That's it. But no, I didn't play any other type of role-playing games. But I mean, listen, we know that particular realm is there. The love for that is horrendous. It's like having the opportunity to just, let your imagination grow and let your imagination go and just have fun with that. Listen, it's a great tool. It's a great game. And I'm happy to have been introduced to it. I'm happy that I'm nerd enough to understand what it is and realize that, yeah, you can have fun with that. And then I can still relate to it in my later years, and I can understand, like, yeah, that's fun. So again, when the movie came out, yes, they had some other Dungeon and Dragon movies beforehand, but I will admit this latest interaction is very, very close to what was there, like what you expect. Having a bard, it made me honestly, I'll even say this: having the bard who was the strategist.
Yes,
it gave me a new appreciation for a bard. I won't lie. It gave me a new appreciation for a bard. I don't play that often, so maybe that's part of his criteria to be.
Could
but
be.
I didn't think of that beforehand until I watched this movie, and I was like thinking, okay, you're the strategist. You're just not playing. You're not just strumming strings and just taking notes and being like the note taker for all the adventures. Mm-hmm. No, you actually have a head on your shoulder. Okay.
Yeah, nice. Absolutely. If you're fans of this genre or you're curious about it, I mean, obviously you can always find a bunch of videos or podcasts to talk about it. There's good cartoons out there that I'll wrap this up with. So one of my favorite cartoons, I think it was closest to the genre of Dungeons and Dragons, was called Record of the Lotus War. If you get that anime Record of the Lotus War, I actually own it. Beautifully drawn, really well done. It represents all the character classes in there, down to their traits and their personalities. So that's one. And then, of course, Critical Role did Vox Machina that you can find seasons 1 and 2 on Amazon. Those are ones to watch. And then Rod's looking it up right now. Record of the Lotus War. So yeah,
I was looking for that one. But
it's sick. It's sick. That's for sure. And then, of course, check out R.A. Salvatore. He did the whole Crystal Shard and Dritz to Under, and he brings that character in, and it's going like 20 something books. Still going strong with his character, and now he's got legacy characters coming about. And of course, the Cleric Quintet, also by R.A. Salvatore, where it's got a monk, a cleric in there, and it's really nice adventures, a lot of fun with a druid. So you get a good understanding with those novels. He paints a really good picture. He takes a little bit slow to start the beginning of these books to kind of really set and build the world, but then the action and the humor and how everything just plays out in the characteristics are really well done. So the world building he does at the beginning is really well worth it. Enjoy those books. And, to your point, Rod, I'll say this. The Bard character, depending how it is, all the characters always get updated year after year after year. So if you started off with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, like the first edition, and you look at a Bard character, a Bard had to be a multi-class character. Before you were able to be a Bard, you had to be like a certain level fighter, you had to be a certain level thief, and I think a certain level magic user, right? Not high up.
Okay.
And then you can get into the Bard class. So a Bard was almost a tank. So by the time you start off and you're like a Bard level 1, you're already like a level 8 fighter, a level 6 thief, a level 4 magic user. So you have all those attributes, and then you become a Bard. They've changed that since then, but the Bard character is more than strumming just a few notes, but they do have their moments on that. And then, of course, if you read Dungeon Magazine or Dragon Magazine, they always came up with new character classes in there. So that's where you got the Beastmaster, like henceforth, like the movie. You got the Archer, right, which was a Ranger Archer, which was like a Robin Hood character. You got the Duelist, who was a Zorro character. You got anything you saw, like a Tarzan character. All those character classes were always represented once something came out. So that's why I said the imagination keeps going. The influence is there. It's absolutely beautiful, and you just got to enjoy it. So let us know what you think about our fan theories on Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon characters, and what happened to them, and where they could be, or why they came back, didn't come back. And if you want to see more, I know I want to see more, not a reboot, a continuation, because I don't think you got to redo anything. I just need to know definite ending. Was that last ending where they get home canon, or did they not get home as opposed to how IDW is doing it? So which ending would you like? That's our point. Once again, thank you for tuning into the iConis podcast. Remember, like, subscribe, rate, share, review, the whole 9 yards. Don't let the show be unknown for too long. And please, check out our community tabs. Sign up and check our community tab on YouTube, and really let us know. Put your votes in there so we can know which way you're leaning. Some people have voted, and we thank you for those who've done it already. And those that haven't, jump on board. Not too late. We're going to have more coming up there for this, kind of rehashing some of our past episodes and really get those voting there, because we want to interact with you, and let us know. And on that note, this whole world was created with a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. Don't roll a one. Keep on dreaming. This is the iConis podcast. We're out. Let's go. My charisma is 18. Okay.